It's not swipe and gripe on a Friday. It's swipe versus gripe. We got to sort this out because Swipa thinks that we're too down and being all sad, and I think he's pulling too much. Nobody believes in us without actually putting expectations on what's going to happen this season. We're going to try and sort it out. Plus, Jamal's back? Oh, wait, no, he says he was never gone. Everyone's just being dumb. We'll sort that out and more on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your life, hanging out with us wherever you are, whether you're in the car, if you're hanging out at work, if you're at home. I love listening to podcasts while I'm just like cooking dinner or cleaning the kitchen. Glad to have you with us. Glad to be part of this community. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more with FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. I'm co-host of Locked On NBA on Tuesdays. I'm joined by Swipa. You can find him in the Player's Choice. You can find him on Bleacher Report. You can find him on his own channel at Swipacam on YouTube. Make sure to go and subscribe. This is Swipe and Gripe, but today it's Swipe versus Gripe because Swipa is very bothered by all this negativity surrounding the Nuggets and is objecting to how people have written off Denver and is like, better keep that energy. So I thought we'd sort it out on today's show. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cede the floor to my man Swipe. But later on, by the way, we'll talk about the preseason win versus the Wolves. Jamal looked really good. That's the biggest news out of that one. We'll talk about that and more in the third segment. Swipe, I'm going to cede the floor. I want your grand position here, the big story here on how you feel about the national media, the local media, the perception around the Denver Nuggets, and why it's so wrong.
I think that it's just been an interesting turn of events. And we could go back a little bit in the timeline, everybody. Go ahead, everybody, get comfortable, get your popcorn, get your coffee. When the Denver Nuggets lost to the Minnesota Timberwolves, everybody was shocked and surprised. People expected them to win the title. They were the favorite for most people, especially for ESPN side, the national media. They were projected to play versus the Boston Celtics in the NBA Finals, and then they lost in the second round, and they were up 15 at half. So they got down at one point by 10 or more with like 3 minutes left. It was just a total collapse across the board. You know, Jokic wins his third MVP. They don't make it out of that conference. And then I think when you look at that, Jamal Murray then goes into the time playing with Canada. He shoots 14% from three, 29% from the field. Very bad. And then you go through the summer, everybody's asking questions. Where did Jamal go? Jamal didn't play great. 23-7 on bad efficiency versus the Lakers. Jamal Murray, 18 points per game on bad efficiency versus the Wolves. Where did Michael Porter Jr. go in the second round? KCP, are they going to resign him? He gets $22 million a year for 3 years from the Orlando Magic. Everybody's mad at Calvin Booth, including myself. I thought that, I would like KCP to be resigned, but I understood the logic. And then we get to this point where we get into the season, and all of a sudden ESPN's like putting his things out. The ESPN machine says 47 wins for the Denver Nuggets. They don't have this, and that. ESPN's like, not only did the Denver Nuggets lose KCP, they apparently lost their fourth best player, because if you look at ESPN rankings that just came out the last few days, KCP, 62nd best player in the NBA after not making the list at all last year. And by the way, I think that's 27 spots above Michael Porter Jr., who is no longer the Denver Nuggets' fourth best player. So when you add all this stuff in, plus nobody knows what's coming from Jamal Murray. Everybody said Nikola Jokic, consensus, best player in the world. Matt, on his great rankings that he had, best player in the world. ESPN, best player in the world. The Ringer, best player in the world. Everybody and their mama, best player in the world. On Nick Wright's Tower of Power, best player in the world. But where are they going to get the firepower from? Where are they going to get the defense from? They've gotten so much worse across the board. Peyton Watson, who's that? Can't shoot the ball. Julian Strawther, 29% from three last year. Can't play defense. Who's that? He's in his second year. Christian Brown, I've never seen him play defense in my life. He can't hit a three, 42% on above break threes. Who cares about that? Who is that? And then they add in the fact, Dario Saric, did you see him play for Golden State last year? Who is that? Did you see what happened last year with Russell Westbrook the last 2 years? Oh, he's guaranteed you're losing your minutes with Russ on the court. I can't believe people, I'm not talking about fans, ESPN. I don't know what Calvin Booth is thinking about having Russell Westbrook on that roster. He's a negative. I don't understand the logic. He can't play next to Jamal Murray. He's going to have really bad turnovers. There's nothing he's going to do to elevate at all. This is the narrative. I'm just telling you what I've been told. All right, this is not from me. This is from the world at large. And so then when some of my best friends in this business, Matt Moore and Ryan Blackburn, after a loss in the preseason, I might add, and I saw Matt try to clean it up at the end of the third segment. It was too late. The damage had been done. I see Matt Moore, oh, man, just the vibes. It's just so low. Oh, it's just really bad, this. And I'm like, I agree. But the thing is, local media, oh, my gosh, pick your chin up a little bit. Like the fans, everybody's going at Jamal Murray. Oh, Jamal, $52 million a year. You haven't proven it. You haven't done this, and that. He's only great in the playoffs. Again, Matt, you've heard me. I've had fair criticism for Jamal Murray. I've said things that Jamal needs to get better at. I've even told you he needs to pick up the slack more for Jokic at times, even though Jokic is the best player in the world. I've said both of these things. They can all be true. But here's my actual thing. I'm hearing the reason why the Denver Nuggets are no longer going to contend in the West, not from you directly, but from the consensus is they no longer have KCP and Jamal Murray is taking a step back. The only evidence we have of that is the Olympics. Jamal Murray, who everybody's looking at saying he hasn't played a good game in the preseason, had a good game in the preseason yesterday. Jamal Murray has seemingly been mostly healthy. Michael Malone did mention something with his knee that was funny. We don't know. Michael Porter Jr. all of a sudden. KCP clears Michael Porter Jr. as a player. Even though Michael Porter Jr. had a great first-round series, was the second best player on the team, averaged 23 on a 70 true shooting in that series, 50% from three. Nobody remembers that. Aaron Gordon, one of the best two-way players in the league, one of the best rim defenders for a wing position in the league. Peyton Watson, one of the best rim defenders at the league, wing in the league. All this stuff. Add up all this, Matt. So just say add all of this up. I have felt the weight of the Denver Nuggets fan base, as even on the inside, we have been colliding and just kind of falling in on each other. Just, I cannot believe they lost to the Wolves. And I can't believe Jamal Murray has looked this inconsistent. So my positioning, Matt, comes directly from how the audience and how the narrative has been spinned locally a little bit, but mostly nationally in the conversation around the Denver Nuggets. Because everybody says, Matt, we have the best player in the world, but there's no hope. Remember, you're a Star Wars fan. What did Princess Leia say? Jokic, your only hope. There's no one else but you. That's the whole conversation about the Denver Nuggets. So that's why I feel the way that I feel. If you look at Coach of the Year odds right now, Matt, Malone's not on any of those lists at all. Nowhere to be seen. So this is what I'm saying. It's just like the narrative around the Nuggets is mostly negative. And I just think it's interesting based on KCP going because of financial reasons. And then the young players, everybody's like, oh, well, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? They still have their core format. They still have their core four, but everything else around it is doom and gloom. That's where my perspective comes from.
Okay. That was a healthy monologue. And so I'm going to tease this and we'll do this on the other side. On the other side, I'm going to get Swipa to stop providing counter narratives and nobody believes in us and actually give some hard predictions on what's going to happen. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Nuggets. Today's show is brought to you by Hims. Guys, sometimes intimate moments happen spontaneously, and we always want to be ready so we can perform in the bedroom. Hims provides access to treatments that can help you. Your sex life is important, but your schedule is busy. You don't have time to go to a doctor's office to get treated for ED. Through Hims, you can get a personalized ED treatment without stepping outside your door. Hims is changing men's healthcare, providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis and their generics up to 95% cheaper. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims can help you find the ED option that works for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's hims.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. All right, Swipa. So the narrative's all wrong and people are overestimating this. I will also say this. The biggest thing is actually you are over. This is a common straw man that people are pulling, which is like, you guys think that KCP was a big deal? Which one is extremely insulting to a two-time NBA champion. And then two, It underrates the fact of it's not really about KCP. It's just like the roster got worse last year, and then the roster got worse again. So if we have 2 years of the roster getting worse, that's a little bit of a problem. Now, some people are like, it's better. And I'm like, I don't know why you think that, but sure. I want to know from you right now, how many wins are the Denver Nuggets winning in the regular season, and what seed are they going to be in the Western Conference?
Well, first off, I think KCP was a very important part of the team. I think it's just the conversation around him has been, I think, a little bit like not rooted in reality at the same time. I'm saying, I think the prediction I have is 53 wins. And I think that gets them to, it just depends. I don't think the Wolves are as good as they were last year. I'm just not a Randall guy, but I think that's pretty clear by now. I think that gets them to around third or second. I think they're going to be about in that area. I think third or second. I think depending on how the Mavericks do this year, not a full believer in the regular season sample for them. So that's probably going to be anywhere between, it's going to be close between 2, 3, and 4. But I think that's about where they'll be. I think 53 wins will get them where they need to be.
Okay, 53 wins and a top 3 seed. Now that's 4 wins lower than last year. So you're predicting them to be worse than last year. So that seems pretty reasonable.
Well, I think they sit more.
Right. And so, and that goes over their win total, which Malone has gone over every single season. And like, I don't have a problem with that. We just need to be able to like nail down where we're at. So I think, in regards to like Ryan and I'll say this, the national conversation where I think it's gone wrong. And I noted this in the article I've got up on Action Network. You can find it on my Twitter timeline at HB Basketball, is the idea that the Nuggets window is closed is ridiculous. And I've said it on the show like 4 or 5 times, and I've said it on other shows. Like, my concerns are about the Nuggets regular season over the next 6 months. It's about the process of getting there. But if they get there as a 6 seed, as a 5 seed, as a 4 seed, as a 3 seed, as a 2 seed, as a 1 seed, if it's 7 or 8, that's going to be not great. But if they get there, I will probably be like, yeah, I don't know, man. I'll take the Nuggets. I was asked on a radio hit I did yesterday on You Better You Bet. They asked me, all right, who's coming out of the West, who's coming out of the East, and who's winning the title? I took Nuggets over Knicks in 6 games. Like, I predicted the Denver Nuggets to win the NBA title. Now, I don't really think of things in those terms anymore because, like, everything for me is probability, right? But if you get the Nuggets into the playoffs, I absolutely think that they're going to have enough because I've said this for 5 years on this show. The playoffs are about solving problems, and the Nuggets have the best problem solver in the game. However, I think the MPJ thing is really interesting because it's like, you're not wrong that he was great in the Lakers series. He matches up really great with that team. And that, like, he had a bad series versus the Wolves. It was a tough matchup for him. I commented at the time, like, they're guarding him. That's what the team said in that series, is that whenever anybody was like, what's going on with MPJ? The team's like, well, if you look, they're not leaving him. And in our system, there's no opportunity for him to get the ball otherwise, right? The version that he has showed up with in this preseason, that changes that dynamic, and there'll be more opportunities for him. And when he does get the ball, he has more options of what to do with it, right? So that's different. And if, like, I'd seen this MPJ before making any sort of prediction, like, I have to upgrade the Nuggets based off of MPJ's performance. I said the other night on the show with Ryan, and Ryan clipped it because he knew Jamal would see it and then complain about it without complaining about it, I said, I was like, the fans just need to see something from Jamal. Like, it's been a long time since you saw something from Jamal. You had individual shots versus the Lakers, and like his game 7, which I've repeatedly said, like, he was really good in game 7. Like, he just was. But overall, it's been a long time since they've seen like a wow Jamal game. And last night was preseason, and that, like, it's as much preseason as the bad was preseason, right? It's entirely equal in terms of the concepts. But last night was like, all right, he showed something, so you can feel a little bit better about it. And we'll talk about that in the final segment. But I do think it's fair. I've repeatedly said I do not like the framing of this entire season is on Jamal Murray. No, you have the best player in the world. That's who it's on. It's on Yoke. Heavy as the crown. That's his job. Like, you can't be like, Jokic is the best player in the world and making his teammates better. His teammates are not good enough and letting him down. That doesn't make any sense. And like, I think Joker is good enough to do that.
I think context is important. Like, I think you can contextualize assistance and help and all that. Yeah,
for sure. I think it's okay to be worried. I think it's okay to be concerned. And a lot of like what I've tried to express is I'm worried about like right now. I don't know what it looks like in January. I've said all the time that you're about 3 different NBA teams throughout the course of a season, sometimes 4 or 5. You evolve. You're just in a different spot. And Jamal's points last night about like, you're on the outside, you don't know what it's like on the inside. Okay, but all I can do is respond to what I see, and the body language on the court and the way that guys talk in interviews and the general consensus and what you kind of hear, like that all informs you, and you just try and do the best you can to synthesize it. And if any player wants to be like, you don't know what's going on inside the locker room, be like, you're absolutely right. You're never going to hear me disputing that.
So I think one thing, Matt, I think that also to inform you what informs me, because I'm around so many different venues of basketball. You mentioned Players Choice, you mentioned Bleacher Report, Twitter. You got to understand, like, I'm listening to national media, but I'm also then listening to just like regular everyday people a lot, and even other contemporaries who are plugged into basketball, but like not necessarily in the media.
Right.
And by and large, most people consensus think the Nuggets aren't winning as many games. I'm hearing as much as 47, 48. They don't have the same kind of upside. They're missing this, and this. And so again, I think some of that's legitimate. Like I've told you and I've expressed I don't think, I would be surprised that unless Christian Brown makes a real leap, I would be surprised if they don't add something to their shooting guard room at some point in time.
Agree.
I don't love Christian's fit with the team from a game by game basis.
The starters. I like the team. I don't.
Yes, with
I like his role in the team. I don't like his fit with the starters.
I even was texting with somebody. I think that like them going underneath every single screen for Christian is going to be bothersome at some point in time. And if you remember, Matt, when the Nuggets were playing versus the Lakers and it was Game 5, and it was when Jamal Murray went that last shot. Remember when they tried to push, I think it was might have been D'Lo, can't remember. They tried to push Rui Hachimura into the paint because Rui was to collapse and come off of his man to kind of stagger off that so Jamal didn't have a wide open mid range. Well, that's what's going to happen with Christian on this court. I think that teams are going to realize that I'm just going to peel off because I'm just not concerned with him and his form and how he shoots. Now, maybe they replaced that with Julian Strawther, so I think they're going to be able to do more of that, but I just think they need a more capable, consistent two-way guard in that spot, and maybe he elevates to that, but at this point, I'm concerned about it. So I have legitimate concerns about the team. I didn't love Dario Saric being added on the roster because he's not a good rim protector. He's not even a great rebounder, but he's a good connected passer. He ostensibly is going to be a good shooter, and he's going to make Russell Westbrook fit with this team more. So they obviously have a view of how they want to win games. So I think there are clear concerns about the overall fit of the roster. But what I am saying is their ceiling is still so high, even in the regular season, because of who they have on their roster. And even Christian Brown's continual fit, or remember, they were winning games with Justin Holiday at the 2. They were winning games with Peyton Watson out there with the rest of the starters. So, like, they're going to be very dominant. But I think for me, it's just the overall level setting that I've seen from the Nuggets is just, it's very low. And I think it's too low.
47, I think it sounds very low to you. It's not that low. That's like a common down year in the NBA. And I think the best way to kind of think about it. So I talk about the margin for error, right? Like, how much is your margin? Like, this is a lot of it. The Nuggets were insulated from bad stretches the last 2 seasons because of how good they were. Like, didn't have it, didn't play great. No, didn't matter. Came back, won anyway. Just, they were able to get through, whether it was clutch time or comebacks. Like, they were insulated against that. They are less insulated now. Like, losses can leak into the house, and that can drag you down. And it's like not a big jump to go from 53 to 47. And I say that like it sounds like a lot because 6 is a lot. In the NBA, the difference between 23 and 29 is significant. The difference between 29 and 35 is significant. 35 and 41 is significant. And 41 and 47 is significant. The gap between 47 and 53 is often, do you look like a real NBA title contender?
The number is 57, no.
What?
It's 57 to 47.
I get that, but that's also like a lot of that is like, do you think that they were really a 57 win team last year? And I'm sure that you do, and I don't. Like, I just don't think that they were as good as the record last year. I think there's like a million ways for us to kind of point that out. And like, you know, Ryan and I may be aligned in some ways, but we often disagree. And he and I are both like, yeah, I don't think they're as good as the record. And I think that we talked ourselves into it as a collective because it was like, it felt good. Like, oh yeah, sure, all this and the other, but tied for most wins in franchise history.
Well, I think teams are as good as their record because that's what you earn those wins. So I think
no way, not in the
there's context behind all of those things. But at the end of the day,
not in an
you won.
82 game season, man. The record is not we have like a lot of indications throughout NBA history that the record's a bad indicator of how good you are.
I agree. I think that the Utah Jazz being the number 1 overall seed, they were not the best team in the Western Conference. I think there's definitely context to that for sure. Right. But I think that more so is like playoff viability and like, the Jazz are relying on Donovan Mitchell and Joe Ingles and Rudy Gobert. I think that's obviously different than relying on, Jokic and Murray and Porter and Gordon and Bruce Brown and all that.
We got to take a break, and I want to talk about Jamal. But I do want to ask you this. Jamal said something last night about people lost the faith. And I just I think you as a Nuggets fan need to have faith. I think Nuggets fans in the comments are listening to this on podcast or at youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets need to have faith. I think having faith as a fan is a good thing when they've shown you they can win. I will just say I do not. My job is not to get sucked into those kind of things. I don't like it when I actually think it's really bad when, even from an analyst standpoint, of being I just have faith in this guy. It's okay, you can have reasoning to believe that something will occur, that this guy will hold up. But I'm not bound to faith in the Denver Nuggets at all. And that makes me better at my specific job. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think faith is interesting. I think you're, to some degree, even you're putting faith in the numbers when you do metrics. As somebody who loves research, you're still placing faith in data. And so I think that a projection tells me that this is what ought to happen based on a statistical probability that I've built in this machine. Well, I'm still putting faith toward, because at the end of the day, there's human error and then human achievement that's built into all these numbers. And so I can project as good as possible. For instance, Julius Randle, he's a 24, 10, and 5 guy. So he should project to be a better fit in some ways for the Minnesota Timberwolves offense than Karl-Anthony Towns. But I logistically think that there's going to be a lot of downfall that you can't project right now, because the numbers will say that it should be a good fit. There are things that should be there. I think with Jamal and what he's talking about, I do think there's a faith standpoint for team. I mean, fan stands for fanatic. So there's already some built-in faith within that prospect. But I think that when you're talking about Jamal, most of the conversation around Jamal, Matt, and I think outside of you and I, is largely bent around he's not worth his contract based on his play versus the Lakers, and especially his play versus the Minnesota Timberwolves in the Olympics. So I think that's where it comes down to. I think people are, if anything, they're pigeonholing Jamal based on a 2-month sample size, which is his worst sample size we've had of him since he came back from injury.
All right, up next, we're going to talk about the final preseason game versus the Wolves. They got to win. They're no longer winless in preseason. That's a good sign. We will talk about Jamal's performance. I want to talk about some of my concerns with the second unit in a different way. And we'll kind of wrap up the show here on Locked On Nuggets. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, the official sportsbook of the NFL. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play data, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Great game by the Broncos last night. Absolutely phenomenal. They beat, I don't know. It was somewhere, that team should probably be ranked somewhere between, the 180th high school team and, a USFL team. So a really quality win last night for the Broncos. You can get on them next week right now at FanDuel. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.
You bet the San Francisco and Chiefs too, by the way. San Francisco 1.5.
They better win. FanDuel.com. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Seriously, they better win. Out wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, no running back.
I don't want to hear excuses. I don't want to hear. You got Patrick
Mahomes.
You have the best player in the world. No excuses.
Better win.
By the way, just so you know how real I am, Matt, there's this comment right here. I just want to be clear about this. Somebody said, Nolan, shout out Nolan. Jokic is tired, didn't try the Timberwolves game. No, I'm gonna tell you about this. No, I'm not accepting that. No way.
I absolutely blew up Ryan in our text thread for complaining about Jokic's contest during this Timberwolves games.
No.
Come on, Ryan.
No.
Come on, Blackburn.
No.
Be better.
No.
Come on now.
No.
Judging Yoke on his contest level versus Luke Garza.
No.
Come on now.
People, there's two extremes to this. You can do that, which is Ryan. I love Ryan, but that's his thing. You're like, why isn't he playing by defense or shooting? No, it's preseason. But his tired. The season ain't started yet. I'm sorry. I've never given LeBron, I've never given LeBron that excuse. It's not gonna happen. Go ahead.
I'll also say this: I don't think he's tired. I think he's bored.
Yeah,
I will say that. Look, if Yoke wants to disprove this, I will be like, hey, Yoke looks engaged. He looks excited. He looks like he's having fun, and I'll talk about that. Every single time I see Nikola Jokic right now step on an NBA basketball floor, it looks like the most job that has ever done. Like when I have to do expense reports after I travel and I have to go through my receipts, that's what this looks like. I'm just telling you what it looks like. And the fact that he's the best player in the world and so impactful and so good without looking like he wants to be there at all is a testament to his greatness. But it is what it is. Jamal, however, looked awesome last night. The step back was so clean. Like, God, his step back was so clean versus the Wolves. And like, of course, like Timberwolves fans are like, yeah, versus our C team. And I'm like, dude, this is preseason. And again, I said the other night with Ryan, just wanted to see something. I needed to see that, like, hey, Jamal can play like he's got a spark. Jamal can play like he's able to get to a step back clean and knock it down. Jamal can look like he can fill up the bucket and be the kind of scorer that we know that he's been in the past. And I don't think it was gone. Just wanted to see it. And we saw it. Now, need to see it in the regular season. But like the DEFCON level on Jamal for me goes down. It goes up a little bit. Up is better. Like it goes up a little bit because it's like, all right, it's fine. Like, all right, I needed to see something. He showed me something. That's all I really needed to see. I thought Jamal looked tremendous last night in the game versus the Wolves C team.
Yeah, the way he talked about it in his interview after is just like he just wasn't. His intention wasn't to try to like go off and score versus anyone. It was we have a new team in some ways. We have a new starting five. Let's make it. I want to make everybody else shine. Like they're the ones that need to figure some stuff out. Right. They're the ones that need to work it out. And there's no need for me to go off for 20 in a game. None.
There's also like so many guys in preseason that have terrible shooting lines. And that, again, I talked about this the other night, but I think it's just important to kind of remember in context is if Jamal had a fine Olympics and a great playoffs, or even like it wasn't as good as the years past, but like Jamal wasn't the problem in the playoffs. If that was the case, I would have been like, I'm not worried about Jamal. I would have said that. And like, I'm not worried about Jamal. It's preseason. It was the specific combination of the injury, how he looked in the playoffs, how he looked in the Olympics, and then here. Like, it's the carryover effect. And it's like, well, that's 3 different situations across 6 months, which is why I wasn't like, Jamal Murray is cooked. Like, no one said that. I was just like, you really would like to see something out of him. Like, there's a difference here. And I think, like, look, everyone's always going to jump to cooked. That's just what we do now. If someone has a bad game, instantly it's, oh, he's cooked. All right, no. Like, Jamal will have a bad shooting night in the first month of the season. That's how this works. That's how basketball is. The NBA is hard. But it was really good to see. Look, you are, it's interesting. You're probably, I think, the most down of anybody I know in Nuggets world on the Saric edition, which is not to say that I think it's like this automatic great thing that everybody was like raving about. The team is very high on him. Like the team loves him. They love having Russ around and they love what Saric brings on the court. Like very big on both those guys. I will just say, I don't love the conceptual idea of Russell Westbrook with a small ball 5. And I have not. It's going to take a lot of work for them to figure out how to get this going. I just don't think it's a very good natural fit with how Russ navigates pick and roll, the type of screens that Dario sets, and where he rolls to. Russ had a bunch of turnovers last night, and it's like, oh, Russ had a bunch of turnovers. I'm like, I don't care about turnovers in the preseason. I know Malone's like, I care about them only from the perspective of Malone keeps telling them not to turn the ball over, and they keep doing it.
Yeah, of course. No.
But it's more to me that a lot of those turnovers were specifically off of those two trying to figure out how to operate and pick and roll. And I'm just not sure that it's a good combo between the two of them.
Well, I think it will work because Sarge is such a good passer. I think this is going to require Russ to move more off ball. I think be more decisive with his movement. And again, Russ fans got mad at me for my first critique of him ever. But then, they'll just let you just laugh at Russell Westbrook, whatever. I think off ball, he's going to have to be a little better with Sarge. But I think the 2-man game is going to be fine. I think that's also why they signed Russ. And also why they signed Sarge. They saw a vision for how they want it to work. Russ needs spacing. As much as you need vertical spacing, he needs shooters. And I think having Sarge on the court to kind of clear out the paint for him, or if you do double on a downhill drive, Sarge is out there, Strother's out there. There are shooters available to take advantage of that gravity. So I think it can work. My thing with Sarge, and I know, when you responded, I just don't want to see any Sarge Jokic minutes. And I know they're just trying it. I get it. But Sarge is just not the kind of player that needs to play with Joker. It's just not. Like,
Why?
this is not.
Why are you down this concept?
Because he needs a defensive four next to him. It's been proven through years of data that he needs somebody who's a. Go ahead.
So you don't like? I want to ask, like, do you not like the idea of MPJ at the four next to him? I'm not saying Sarge is as good as MPJ. We're talking about player archetype, right? Like, I'm not expecting MPJ. I'm not expecting Sarge to be a 50, 40, 90 shooter. I'm not expecting him to be as good of a rebounder as MPJ is. I'm just talking about the archetype of what they look like. Do you not want to see MPJ at the four next to Joe?
They're different players. So functionally, MPJ is a better rebounder. I think he's a better defender, but I also think he's just a more natural floor spacer. Like, there's so there, and even off ball, DHOs, movement, he can be a pick and roll ball handler, like in certain situations. Sarge can't do any of that. That's not his role. And on top of that, he makes rebounding more difficult for Jokic because he can't jump at all. Like, at least MPJ can get up and he's long. But like Sarge, he just has a much more limited floor on athleticism. And I think that functionally changes how the team can work, because you can't go on the other end and do a 4-5 pick and roll with Sarge and Jokic to the same degree you can with Michael Porter Jr. or Aaron Gordon or even maybe Peyton Watson, even though I don't think Peyton should be playing the four either. Maybe Zeke Naji. I think Zeke would be a better fit with that. I even think Vlaco Chanchar, when he's healthy, would be a better fit than Sarge.
I actually think high-low passing. See, I'm actually pretty high on that combo. I think the high-low passing between Sarge and Yo could work. I think that they're both smart players that play the same way, because they're both, quite honestly, they're both European and they both have that kind of background experience. Like, Yoke's going to understand what Sarge is doing at all times. Nothing Sarge does is going to be confusing to Nikola. And that's honestly one of the biggest problems that like he has, is when he's like, what are you doing? When he's like, why are you there? Why aren't you going? You know, he gets frustrated when he doesn't understand why guys aren't making the right play. So I'm not as worried about it, but it'll be interesting to see. I'm actually way more worried about the Dario without Yoke minutes, just because I'm like looking at this. I'm like, man, especially, I'll just continue to say this. If the CB thing does not work, if we're a month in and it's like, yeah, we got to get more shooting into that starting unit, and it's either Julian or an addition, or God help everyone if it's Russ. Like, CB with that second unit is only going to compact the spacing more. I laughed specifically at when you were like, when Russ needs to be off ball more. And I'm just like, that's what I laughed at, because I'm just like, until he proves he's going to do it, I'm just going to have to be skeptical. I think Russ will move when he's next to Yoke. I think that's like the big key here is Russ will move when it's Jokic, because of that specific, like, that's how good you have to be for Russ to be like, no, you can have the ball. That's where you have to be in order for Russ to play off ball and move. That's kind of my concern.
Yeah, I think, I guess I wasn't necessarily thinking about like major off-ball movement, but like if you're running a pick and roll or a DHO, or Russ is setting a back screen for someone, Russ is smart enough to recognize like, okay, I got to slip to the rim. Like mostly those kind of like simple, kind of very washed down movements that he could have, especially if he's setting a screen for Julian off-ball, something like that. But, we'll see.
Is it, so to wrap up our big picture conversation, is it fair for me to be concerned about the Nuggets in the immediate without counting them out?
Yeah, 1,000%. I think that's fair. I think the end of season prognosis. Oh, by the way, MVP bets. So I think Jokic is going to win MVP this year, but I think the person I think can take it from is SGA. Most realistically, be SGA. But a lot of the prop comes down to people even thinking, like I said, just even the regular conversation. People that think he's not going to finish top 4 or 5, or at the very best top 4 or 5, because of voter fatigue, but also because where he's going to be. And again, I just think they're going to win too many games. I think he's going to be too good. Everybody should know is him, because that's where the conversation is right now. I just think people's end of season prognosis for the Nuggets is just like, it's just that's too far.
Counting them as an also-ran, I think, is a really big mistake. This team is not an also-ran. This team's an NBA contender. They can win 47 games and still be an NBA contender. So, all right, it's going to do it for Locked On Nuggets for Friday. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back on Sunday night for No Jinx. We'll get you set. Ryan and I will talk about our first thoughts on the week ahead for the Nuggets as they get ready for their season debut versus the Oklahoma City Thunder on Thursday. We'll be here all throughout the week previewing the first few games of the season, and then we'll be into post-game shows and pre-game shows and all of the great stuff. Season is here, and you'll catch it all right here on Locked On Nuggets.